They mocked him as a drunk. They named him false. But Dionysus didn't need belief, just an invitation. The God Who Burns the Mask. Chapter 1. The God in the Dust. He came barefoot, cloaked in dust and silence, with a crown of ivy on his brow and laughter in his teeth. Yet not a soul in Thebes knew. They had already begun to die. He walked the low roads at dusk, where the stones bled heat and the shadows stretched like fingers. No trumpet heralded him, no priests welcomed him. The gates stayed shut. Just another vagabond, another drifter with dirt on his skin and wine on his breath. They didn't see the vines curling behind his feet, didn't notice the birds turning their heads to follow him. They saw only a man, and men, Thebes believed, could be broken. He found his flock outside the walls, in the forgotten places, widows, dancers, mad women, slaves who remembered freedom only in dreams. They knelt in the dirt, laughing without reason, weeping wine from their eyes as he spoke, a voice too quiet for thunder, too deep for silence. The world is a lie dressed in stone. I have come to shatter the dressing. He poured wine into cracked cups, whispered names only the wind remembered, touched their foreheads. And they remembered who they had once been, not obedient, not shameful, not small, but divine. Inside the city, King Pentheus heard whispers. They called it a cult, a drunken rabble, women pretending at power, men who wept in public. His court laughed, but Pentheus did not. He felt it in his teeth, a wrongness, a tremor beneath the marble. The name Dionysus crawled through the palace like ivy. Some foreign sorcerer, the priest said, another charlatan. Still, he ordered the guards to burn the camps. By morning, the camps were gone, but the guards returned, smiling, clothes stained with wine, voices full of songs they didn't remember learning. Pentheus struck one of them, hard. The man thanked him, eyes gleaming like dawn. On the second night, the fountains ran red, not with blood, but wine, Merlot. The temple goats danced in circles. A child was born mid-dusk and spoke fluent poetry in Dionysus' name. Thebes didn't know what to do with this kind of plague. Dionysus climbed the hill outside the city. His followers spun behind him, masked, wild, mouths full of laughter and teeth. Some wore skins, some wore nothing, but all of them wore freedom. He turned to them, arms wide. Let the city call us madness, let it call us disease. We are the truth that grows through the cracks. And when he looked down on Thebes, marble glinting cold beneath the moon, he smiled. The play had begun. Chapter 2. The Man Who Would Not Bow. In the throne room of Thebes, King Pentheus ruled with a hand carved from marble. He believed in order, in legacy, in silence. So, when the name Dionysus first reached his ears, he dismissed it like smoke. A foreigner, a madman. The stories of masked women, wild rites, drunken dances were beneath him. But the name returned, again and again, always with more whispers. Servants failed to answer when called. Scribes wrote poetry instead of records. A senator tore off his robes mid-session and fled the city. Each time, Pentheus repeated the same word. Fraud. He sent soldiers to arrest the so-called prophet. None returned in chains. One came back singing. One came back naked. One came back with vines growing from his sleeves. Pentheus struck the last in front of the court. The soldier bled and smiled. He's already inside, he said. That night, Pentheus banned all worship of Dionysus, all gatherings, all masks. He poured wine onto the temple steps, burned the ivy from his gates. But ivy grows back, and by morning it had returned, stronger, The high priest warned him. He is no mortal. His name is older than ours. Pentheus threatened exile. I will not be ruled by illusion, he said. But when Dionysus appeared at his court, he was no illusion. He came barefoot, robed simply, unarmed, beautiful in a way that disarmed. Not soft, not cruel, just inevitable. Pentheus called him a coward, a pretender, demanded he confess. Dionysus smiled. I confess nothing. But if you wish to see what I am, wear the mask. Come to the hills. The king narrowed his eyes. You want me to dance? I want you to understand. He handed Pentheus a veil, ivory white, soft as air. It smelled faintly of honey and ash. The king held it, unimpressed. A trick. No, said Dionysus, a revelation. And so the king agreed, to follow, to spy, to wear the mask and witness the rites for himself. Dionysus turned away, already smiling, already knowing. The mask wasn't the disguise. The mask was the truth. Chapter 3. The Mask and the Mirror. They dressed him in a woman's robe, not silk, not embroidered, nothing noble, just soft linen, loose at the shoulders, dyed with crushed berries and sweat. A veil over his face, bangles at his wrists, a sash that made him look slender, shapeless, harmless. King Pentheus, ruler of Thebes, war-born, bloodline of Cadmus, now hidden beneath the skin of a girl. And Dionysus watched him change. The god circled him like a tailor, adjusting folds, lifting the veil, smiling in that way that said, I've already seen you naked. You should sway more when you walk, Dionysus said gently. I do not sway, Pentheus snapped. You will. The mirror showed what Pentheus would not say aloud. In it, he saw himself, not as a king in disguise, but as something strangely beautiful. There was softness in his cheekbones, a curious glint in his eyes, a curve to his lip that was never allowed to form behind a crown. And he stared at himself far too long. I look ridiculous, he muttered. No, said Dionysus, you look free. He led the king through the city by side alleys and back walls. Thebes burned with tension. Guards lined the gates. Priests paced in silent fury. But no one recognized him. He was no longer Pentheus. He was someone they had never feared. The wild hills loomed ahead. Mount Cithaeron, where the Maenads danced. Pentheus clutched the hem of his robe. He felt naked, but also untethered. Dionysus moved like breath, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, sometimes gone for minutes, then reappearing from trees with a vine-draped smile. He never spoke too loudly, never touched the king, only watched, as Pentheus slowly forgot to pretend. By dusk, they reached the edge of the rites. Pentheus crouched in the brush, veiled and trembling. What he saw was not chaos. It was ritual. The Maenads, women he had once called mad, prostitutes, rebels, slaves, moved like stars across a dark sky. They danced in wide circles. Snakes wrapped around their arms, hissing in harmony. Their feet made thunder on the mountain. Their voices wove into song. It was terrifying and magnificent. One woman cupped wine from a broken stone, poured it over her head. Another howled, and her cry broke into laughter so raw it tore the air. A third stared straight at Pentheus, though she could not see him through the thicket. She smiled. The king's pulse hammered. He turned to Dionysus. I want to see more. I want to go closer. You will, the god whispered, but only if you lose the last of yourself. He reached forward, lifted the veil, and Pentheus stepped into the firelight. No one screamed. No one struck him. The Maenads welcomed him like a sister. They draped him in ivy, painted his lips red, called him by a name he did not know, but one that made his skin tingle when spoken. They danced with him, sang with him. He forgot why he'd come, forgot what he wore, forgot who he was. And Dionysus watched, not with cruelty, but with the patience of a god who always tells the truth, even if the truth kills. When the drums reached their peak and the moon carved fire across the sky, Pentheus threw his arms up and howled. His mouth opened, but it was not his voice that came out. It was something older, something buried. The Maenads howled back, and they began to circle. Chapter 4. The Dance in the Hills. The fire crackled in rhythms no mortal had written. Flames danced sideways, driven by drum beats that had no source. The moon hung too low, too large, like it had crept closer just to see the end of a lie. And Pentheus, the king, no longer stood like a man. He moved like a shadow stitched into ecstasy. The Maenads sang his name, not Pentheus, but the name Dionysus had whispered into the roots of his mind. The name he would never speak again. The one that opened him. He wore no crown now, only ivy, only joy. Around him, the world had broken its mask. Wine poured from the bark of trees. Animals walked backward. A doe spoke a riddle in a dead language. The wind itself laughed. None of it disturbed him. He laughed too. Dionysus stood at the edge of it all. Arms folded, head tilted, watching as his godhood unfolded in others. He had not come to destroy Pentheus. He had come to free him. And what was freedom, if not the end of pretending? Pentheus danced, and he was beautiful in it. For a moment, he wasn't a king. He wasn't a man. He was what Dionysus had always been, the undoing of cages. But no mortal can stay in ecstasy forever. The mask always slips. Even the divine cannot grant permanent unselfing. There must be a reckoning. It began with a single Maenad, eyes wide, face blank. She stopped dancing. She stared at him, head tilting slowly. Then another stopped, then two more. The circle closed in, but this was not love, not anymore. "He's not one of us," someone whispered. "He stinks of marble," another hissed. "Too clean, too shaped, too controlled." Pentheus backed away. "I know, He stumbled. The veil slipped from his head. They saw the truth. Not their sister, not their priestess, but a spy, a man, a king. The singing stopped, the fire dimmed, and Dionysus stepped forward, calm, hands still empty. "You wanted to see," he said, voice soft as wine spilled in moonlight. "Now you see." Pentheus turned, tried to run, but the Maenads caught him. They moved as one, hands like claws, voices high and trembling. Tears streamed down their cheeks as they tore at him. Not from hate, but from frenzy, from divine possession, from joy. His cries didn't sound like royalty. They sounded like a man falling through everything he had ever built. At the center of them all, Agave danced. She had not known she was his mother. Not then. She only knew she had found prey. Her hands were soaked in red when she raised his head above the flames. His eyes still wide, his mouth open like a broken door. And she smiled. Dionysus watched. Not cold, not triumphant, just true. He had promised vision, and he had delivered. The wind lifted, the moon blinked, and the drums fell silent. By morning, there would be nothing left of the king but torn silk, a mask in the dirt, and a question hanging in the air. What happens when the lie dies and the god is real? Chapter 5. The rending. The sun rose slow and gold, as if the sky itself hesitated to witness what had been done in the dark. The mountain steamed with silence, and from its slope, Agave descended, barefoot, blood-slicked, smiling. She walked like a queen from legend, thorns in her hair, vine cuts across her arms, her eyes alight with holy fever. She carried the head with both hands, held high as an offering. The face was ruined, cheeks torn, lips split, but the jaw was still sharp, the eyes still half open. To her, it looked like a lion. She laughed. "See what I've done," she whispered. "See the beast I've slain for you." Behind her, the Maenads followed, silent now, smeared with proof. The song gone from their lips. The joy had fled and left only ritual. Thebes met her at the gate. First stares, then gasps, then screams. Her sisters fell to their knees. The guards could not look at her. Only one man approached. Old, bent, cloaked in mourning grey. Cadmus, father, founding king, and now, a man shattered by the gods. "Agave," he said, voice cracking. "Daughter." She laughed, held out the head like a trophy. "Do you see it, father? The lion, I tore him down myself." Cadmus looked, trembled. "No, child," he whispered. "No, look again." He reached for her hand. Slow, gentle. He tilted the head. The light struck it different now. The eyes, human. The mouth, familiar. The hair, her own son's. Pentheus. Agave's smile cracked. Her breath hitched. The madness peeled like bark. She dropped the head. It hit the stones with a sound that split her soul in half. "No," she said. Number no." She looked at her hands, stared at the blood under her nails, and screamed. Dionysus stood nearby, no longer in disguise. He wore the godskin now, golden, terrible, eyes like flame under still water. "You would not see me," he said, "so I made you see yourselves." Cadmus fell to his knees. "I believed, Lord, I did. Long ago." "You did," said Dionysus, "and then you forgot." He looked at Agave. "You called me false. You spat on my rights. You mocked my name." She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. There was no excuse, only the truth. And the truth was too much to live with. Dionysus turned away. "I am not cruel," he said. "I am not wrathful. I am only real." Thebes did not burn. Thebes was not struck down by lightning or war. Thebes was left awake, sober, ruined. The people had danced, and now they had to remember what it cost. The god walked the streets once more. No one stopped him now. He passed the palace, past the temple, past the place where Pentheus once sat, and past judgment. No one bowed. No one moved. They only watched, and where his feet touched stone, ivy grew. Chapter 6. The God revealed. There were no horns, no thunder, no divine scream to mark the end, only silence. The kind of silence that follows a scream too long held. Dionysus stood on the steps of the palace, the same stone Pentheus had stood on. Once. The same platform where laws had been shouted, where men had bowed, where masks of order had ruled. Now, the god stood there, unmasked, no veil, no robe, no pretense of mortality. He wore a crown of vine and snake. His skin shimmered like dusk on water. His eyes held no end, just depth. Thebes gathered slowly, like survivors creeping into a crater. They had danced, they had seen, they had lost the lie. And now they looked upon what had always been there. A god not made of thunder, but of vision. Not crowned by lightning, but by what you become when the mask falls away and the truth walks in your skin. Agave remained in her house, veiled in ash. She spoke to no one, only wept. Cadmus dressed in black and wandered the ruins of his bloodline, hands brushing stone that once knew music. He did not beg for mercy. He knew he'd been given too much already. And Dionysus. He did not smile. He did not gloat. He did not punish further, he simply spoke. You looked at ecstasy and saw sin. You looked at freedom and saw infection. You looked at me and saw only a boy with no crown. His voice rang like a bell made of honey and bone. So I gave you what you wanted. Madness, confusion, the end of the mirror. He stepped down from the steps. The crowd parted. Some fell to their knees. Others bowed their heads. A few looked up and saw, not the god of wine, not the god of excess, not the madman, but the truth, the terrible, sacred truth that joy and horror can wear the same face. Dionysus walked past them. Where he stepped, flowers grew, vines curled, statues cracked open and wept wine. He passed a child who touched his foot. The child did not cry. The child laughed, then stared at his own hands in wonder like they had just been born new. Outside the city, the mountain still pulsed with song, faint, like a heartbeat too slow to be human. The god looked back once and spoke his last words to Thebes. You will not forget me, not because of what I did, but because of what you became when you looked at me. Then he walked into the hills, back into myth, back into story, leaving Thebes broken, not by punishment, but by clarity. And the people, they rebuilt, but slower, quieter, with vines now grown deliberately into every wall. And once a year, when the moon hung too low, they wore masks again, not to hide, but to remember.